It completely blunders with knight takes d5. It completely blunders. Because if pawn takes, then bishop c7, guarded by the queen, and the black's queen is completely smothered. In this game, I made an absolutely horrible opening blunder. Actually, I had the black pieces in this game. And this is round 4 of the DMV Adults Only tournament. This is the no engine recap. And I'm playing against a 1700. And yeah, I'm on a 4-game losing streak so far, and I'm trying to bounce back and hopefully play better. But honestly, the round before this, the one that I lost, it was still kind of ringing in my head. I've lost a lot of confidence in my abilities. And in this position, my opponent plays a Queen's Gambit, and I play the Queen's Gambit declined. He plays Knight C3, and this is one of the most main ways to play. So he plays the exchange variation and Bishop G5. I play this against a lot of other people. It's a very, very common opening. And I play H3, H6, kicking the bishop back, Bishop E7, breaking the pin. And, you know, Queen C2 is designed to prevent the development of the bishop to F5. And the game's going on. We're both castling, developing very normally. And he plays Knight G-E2. There's 2 main ways to play. Knight F3 and Knight E2. Most people think objectively that Knight G-E2 is the better move. And it allows for more flexibility. Like, for example, with the knight on F2, you can play F3 and E3. Play for the center more. There's different ways you can play. I play Knight BD7. He castles, and I play move A5. And in this position, my opponent plays Bishop G3. This is a weird move. This is a weird move because it's not prompted. This is an unprompted move. And usually my opponents, after A5, they sometimes go A4. Sometimes they go rook here. They might go F3, and I'll go B5 and E4. And, you know, we trade, and, you know, and Knight G4, for example, like they usually play F3 here, or they move one of their rooks over, or, you know, the game goes on. The game goes on. But in this position, my opponent, he plays Bishop G3 completely unprompted. Like, I wasn't threatening the bishop. I was not threatening discoveries. And I was like, okay, so I guess he wants to meet knight here with maybe F3. Although that wouldn't make much... Yeah, F3 would make sense here. And, you know, after takes, and he's going to play for E4. You know, so I think that's his idea. Because if I could go... You know, if he plays like A3, for example, I could play Knight E4, and he'd be forced to trade bishops, and if he F3, then I can take, and then this E3 pawn is hanging at the end. So I was like, okay, maybe that's the idea of Bishop E3, is to have better options against Knight E4, and not be forced to trade like dark squared bishops. I'm like, okay, that sort of makes sense. And I was like, okay, well, I could play B5. Like, I was like, I could play B5 here. I could play B5. Like, I don't see anything wrong with it. But, you know, but maybe he's going to play E4. Okay, E4, and then Bishop A6, then E5, and then Knight here. But after E4, I can also play B4. And if E5, I can go here. That would also make sense. And, you know, his bishop, my knight on the edge of the board isn't that bad because I can take the bishop whenever I want to. Like, this isn't so bad. This isn't so bad at all. And yeah, I probably wouldn't play Bishop A6 here because of E5. But even here, it's not that bad. Because, you know, my knight's still going to attack the bishop. And I was like, okay, well, after you know, B5, after B5, he could play H3. And after Bishop A6, he could play E4. And I could play B5. I'm like, okay. And then maybe he would take, and then maybe play a Knight A5, and then I could play Knight H5, and he come here and might bring his bishop back. And I was like, okay. I mean, this doesn't look that bad for me. Maybe I take here. Not sure. I have some discoveries. Yeah, this is probably fine for me. But, you know, I was, you know, but I couldn't really decide. You know, there's different move orders he could do. He had different options. You know, B5 is not a forcing move at all. And Bishop A6 is not a forcing move at all. So you had a lot of different options. I was considering my options. And I was like, no, I thought for 12 minutes on this move. And I was like, you know what? know what? I'm just gonna play knight h5, and I'm just gonna take his bishop. This diagonal is completely covered. I'm just gonna play knight h5 and take his bishop, and then continue with queenside expansion maybe, or maybe just put my other knight to f6 and develop normally. It completely blunders with knight takes d5. It completely blunders. Because if pawn takes, then bishop c7, guarded by the queen, and the black's queen is completely smothered. I couldn't believe it. And mentally, my mental state after this move, like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, this is the 5th game. This is the 5th game in a row. I've lost 4 games before this. 3 games from last weekend, and another game I just played earlier in that day that I played this game. And I was like, dude, I'm just missing moves left and right, and I'm not doing anything right. Also, in this position, if b5 instead of knight h5, there's also this move knight b5. Same idea, to smother the queen. So both of my main ideas of b5 and knight h5 were bad. They were just bad moves. Like, both ideas are bad. I'm not even sure what I should do. Probably knight f8. If I had to guess, like, knight f8 is probably a reasonable move. And maybe I can continue developing my bishop like this. Maybe I can play b5 now because, let's say he makes a random move like this. I could play, well, actually, okay. b5, then the c pawn is really weak, but let's ignore that. If he does sacrifice, then bishop c7, my queen has d7 now. If I just move my knight, my queen isn't smothered anymore. So, but yeah, after bishop g3, I play knight h5, and I absolutely just blunder here. I just down a pawn. And the reason why it's so bad is because after knight takes g3, if he takes my bishop, if I could take his rook, then this position isn't so bad. Oh, well, it's not. It's winning. It's actually, I would be better in this case if I could take his rook. But knight takes e7 comes with a check. And he's simply up a pawn. He is simply up a pawn in this position on move 15. And I fell asleep at the board. Well, I didn't even fall asleep at the board. I thought for 12 minutes and made a blunder. I thought for 12 minutes. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So he has knight on g3. I just decided to play knight f6. I could go g6 here. It gets a little bit dicey after bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. If I block with the queen, then I hang the rook on e8. And if I go king h8, he could take this pawn. And if I block now, he has 4 pawns for the piece. He has a lot of pawns, and my king is still naked. Like, maybe he can go queen f5, but he might not do it. He might not sacrifice his bishop. It looks appealing, but it's also kind of scary. But I just play knight f6. He could play bishop on f5 and force a trade of bishops, or play knight f5 and get his knight to a nice square. Instead, he plays rook ac1, which I think you just put a knight or a bishop on f5. Honestly, you just need to put a knight and a bishop, and you're up a pawn. You have a center. I do not, so I think he should just put a piece on f5. But he doesn't. He plays rook ac1, which also totally reasonable. Now he can play queen c5 next and take back with the rook. Everything's good for white. Everything's good. I play g6 now because if bishop takes, pawn takes, and queen check, I can block with the queen. And the rook on e8 is no longer hanging because my knight on f6 guards it. So that was my idea. So g6 now. Now he can't play bishop f5 or knight f5 now. But he plays knight e2. And his idea is, like, let's say after a move like bishop e6 and knight f5, let's say I get lazy and I just take this pawn. It's losing, by the way, if I did take it, because the bishop's trapped. But let's say I just took the pawn. Then he could sacrifice the bishop, and if I did take, then queen check, and it looks a little bit more appealing. Actually, no, it doesn't. Why did I think that? Yeah, why did I think this move was fine? Yeah, why did I don't remember why I thought the sacrifices worked better with the knight on g6. I don't remember why I thought that. Huh, that's weird. But I did play king g7 though. He played knight f5, and now let's say I make a move like a4 for example, just a wasted move. Then sacrificing looks a little bit more appealing because now once again he does win this h6 pawn. With my king on g7, my queen cannot block on g7. And I really in this position I really wanted to play knight d5, but then I was like, once again the sacrifices, it looks really annoying. Or maybe I can even block with the queen here. Sure, I can do that too. And, maybe e4 next. It just didn't look appealing at all. Oh wait, e4 hangs the pawn, I guess. Yeah, it hangs the pawn. But this position didn't look very appealing to me. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But maybe it's fine. So I play king g7 though, and he plays knight there. I play g5, which is a horrible move, but also I don't really see what else to play. Maybe I could go back to g8. And so now if, like sacrificing the bishop, once again, I can play queen g7. Maybe king f8, king back to g8 is a good move. I play g5, and which is a horrible move because these light squares are weak. But honestly, I didn't know what else to do, and I hated my position. I hated my position, naturally, because I'm just down a pawn. I ended up playing the move knight h5. Designed to prevent the knight from going to g3. And that's really it. Because let's say I make a move like bishop e3, bishop e6, then knight g5, and this knight's going to f5, and I can never kick it out, and it looks really bad. Like, I don't even know what to play. Like, I have no counterplay, which is this. But let's say like knight d5, for example. He could play e3, which seems pretty reasonable. I really have no counterplay here. I never had the c5 pawn break because it's well guarded by both the queen, the rook, and the pawn. I have no pawn play in this position, and I'm kind of just sitting here waiting to die. And let's say I just move. I don't even know what to do. Like I move rook over, then like knight f5, and maybe you would play bishop f5 instead. So I cannot take because of knight takes, and it's a fork. Maybe he would do that. I don't know. But the knight going back to f5 didn't seem very appealing to me. That's why I played knight h5 to prevent knight g3, so it cannot go to f5. He plays a3, which I'm like, okay, that doesn't really do anything. I play bishop e6. He plays bishop f5 now, and like, okay, like if I take, his queen gets into my position, and it's not so bad, but it's not so good either. So I just decided to, like, okay, I'm just going to play queen f6. And after bishop takes, I want to take with the rook, but then my knight gets trapped with g4. My knight cannot go backwards. It cannot go forward because it's guarded. Why these squares are guarded. And so, okay, I got to take with the queen. And, my opponent this entire time was like shaking his head. He's like, oh, man, like, like he couldn't find a way through. But, like, this position is so great for him. Like, I mean, it's just like it's gonna take a while to win, but like you just put your rooks in the center. Maybe eventually do a pawn break. Maybe you play for e4 eventually. I'm not sure what's the best way to play. But I thought he would play like knight c3, maybe e4, maybe put a rook on e1, play for e5 and d5 maybe. I don't know. But like my king's perpetually weak. You don't have to try to exploit it now, but it's weak though. But he plays queen c3, setting up a discovery. So, for example, rook here, then d5 check, queen blocks. Then, because if I don't block with the queen, then I'll lose my queen. So queen blocks, takes, and takes. Even if I go rook c8, and this whole thing happens again, now this pawn is very loose on c6, and it's an easy target. Probably rook a5. And doubling the rooks like this is probably an easier way to do it because I cannot guard everything. It's too hard to guard all my pawns. Or you can even play knight d4 here, and I cannot kick out the knight. My knight's on the edge of the board still, and life is bad. I guess I could take back with the knight here, but it doesn't make much of a difference. This position is really, really bad. So after queen c3, I play knight f6. Play knight f6. So if d5, I can just take with the queen. or with the pawn, either way. But after knight f6, he plays knight g3 now. So now, if I move like this, for example, d5, I cannot take with the queen because of knight h5. And this knight is pinned by the queen. And after the king moves, then he can play knight takes f6, attacking the queen. And you know, this is bad news bears for me. So after knight g3, I really want to play the move h5. And because my knight moved away from h5, I could roll these pawns down the board and try to generate an attack. It's a desperate attack, but I was like, maybe this will work. Maybe this works. But I couldn't make it reasonable. Like, for example, then he could play the move d5, and after I take, he could check, and then I go here. And he could even trade everything if he wants to. And I was trying to evaluate this. I was like, is this really good for me? Like, even take once and then play rook here, forking the pawns. I was like, this doesn't look very good. Like, this doesn't look very good at all. But I really wanted to play h5, but I was afraid that he would liquidate everything by going d5 and taking on h5. So, and if I go king g6 to get out of the pin, then queen d3 and knight f5 here, and there's no way for me to guard this h6 pawn. If I go king h7, then now I'm setting up discoveries against the king, and maybe knight d7 does the job well enough, because king g7 or g8, I lose an exchange, so I'm down in a pawn and an exchange, and that would be very bad. So that's why after knight g3, I just go king g8. So now you know, my king's no longer in any sort of pin, and, you know, maybe I'll be fine. He plays queen c5. I play knight e4, just trying to trade off knights, because his knight is really good when it gets to the f5 square. Like, it's really good, and my knight sucks, so, you know, might as well just trade it off, I guess. And now we're in a heavy piece endgame. And I actually wasn't so pessimistic about my position anymore, because, firstly, he has not generated any sort of pawn play. He only has his half-open c-file, and that's it. And it's going to be really... And he's not preparing f3, e4. He's just not doing it. Because he needs to get, like, a rook and maybe a queen here to guard it and get his pawns rolling. That's one option he could do. Or he could try to get some open files with b4, but he's not doing it. And the fact that he hasn't done that, I'm like, is this really so... Like, is he really going to be able to win this position? Like, I actually don't believe in him. Like... I actually really thought that. I was like, I don't really believe in him in a heavy piece endgame. We just have rooks and queens. Like, I actually don't believe in him. So I actually thought, like, maybe I have good chances to hold. He plays queen b6, attacking this pawn. I defend. He plays rook c5, attacking this pawn. And here, I calculate something really cool. And I thought it would end the game on the spot with a draw. I thought that the rook a6, queen d8, king g7... If he takes the pawn, then I have rook e8, and if he goes queen d7, then I win a rook. You know, and my rook on e8 is guarded by my queen, so I just win a rook. So he has to go queen c7, but I go rook e7 and queen e8, because once again, he has to keep touch with the rook, and it's just going to be a draw. Like, it's just going to be a draw, and if he ever moves his queen off this diagonal, then I win a rook. So I was like, oh, sweet. Oh, sweet, man. Wait, this is awesome. So king g7. King takes, rook takes, rook e8, queen c7, rook e7, rook e5. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so freaking... Like, this is the 5th game in a row. The 5th game in a row, man, where I am just missing moves left and right. I'm just missing moves left and right. And and yeah, like, if... And the thing is, I saw that move. I saw rook e5 in this position. In this position, after rook e8, I saw that if rook e5, he cannot do that because queen takes desperado, and if he takes my rook, then I take his queen, and so I would just be up a rook. If he played and if he takes my queen, then I take his queen, so and I'm up a rook. And, you know, I have 2 rooks, he has 1. So I saw that he had rook e5 in this position. Well, I saw that he didn't have it. But I saw the move. I saw the move rook e5. But for whatever reason, after queen c7, I'm like, oh my gosh, if rook... You know, and this happened in the game. I don't really have it. I didn't really see any other options. But he played rook e5 now. And I'm like, oh my gosh. How did I miss this? Like, why am I missing these moves? Why am I missing these moves? Like, why am I missing these moves? But the thing is, if I knew it didn't work, I wouldn't have played king g7 here. I wouldn't have played it if I knew that the perpetual didn't work. Because that was my goal. I wanted a perpetual here. And so that was my goal. But if I knew the perpetual didn't work, what I would have done was rook e8, queen f6, rook e6. And once again, he could play the move rook e5. He could. But it's a bit better for me now because after rook takes, rook b6, it's hard for him to guard this pawn. He could go rook b1. But that gives me time to go rook f5. And he could go here, but now we double up. And he's still up a pawn, but it's only one pawn. And the game goes on, and I might be able to hold this. I have better rook activity. My king can get in a bit quicker, maybe. And it's not so easy for him to play. But instead of that, he's up 2 pawns now. He's up 2 pawns. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know how many times I can blunder more. I don't know how many more times I can blunder. I don't know how many times I can blunder. Like, I think I've reached the maximum number of blunders I could possibly do in over-the-board rated games that last multiple hours. And even here, I make the wrong decision. I thought after rook takes, he would probably take with the queen. And we would reach an endgame where I'm down 2 pawns. Like, I thought, like, okay, this is almost like going to happen. But it's going to take a lot more work for him to do. But whatever, I just have to play. But it's not so easy. For example, rook b6. And if you do not defend the pawn, then, like, hey, my rook's active. It's going to be, I have this passed c pawn. And it's not super easy for you to convert. And if you defend your pawn with b4, then I can attack. And if you ever defend with rook h1, then now I can move my king forward. And, it's not so easy for you to hold on to all your pawns. So I actually thought, like, okay, this endgame, I actually have some chances here. But he just takes with the pawn. And my king is still perpetually weak, and I cannot force a trade of queens. And if I do force a trade of queens, in a different way, it's not nearly as good as the variation that I just showed. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is so bad, actually. Like, why did I do? I should have just taken the queen here and then play this. I'm still down 2 pawns, and I will still likely, lose this game. But, it is what it is. I even tried to double up here on the A file. And, the game goes on. I'm probably going to win one of my pawns back. It's probably not enough. But I can probably win at least one of my pawns back. But instead of going for this rook endgame, this double rook endgame, I completely blunder again. This is a third major mistake here. By allowing queens to stay on. I just allowed queens to stay on, and I made it very easy for him. So I played b5. My rook, because this b pawn is hanging, and I really don't have any moves. Like, my rook is just stuck. I guess I can't even go rook a5 because it would hang the rook. I could go here and try to take the open file. Maybe this is what I should have done. Yeah, maybe this is what I should have done and try to go for activity. Maybe rook c1. But he has back rank issues. So, like, let's say, I don't even know what move to make. Maybe I play h5. I don't know. He can play h3. And maybe I'm generating something here. I'm trying to open up his king. Even this is much better than what I did in the game. Like, even this is so much better than what I did in the game. But actually, queen takes not super easy to keep queens on. Even this, yeah, I'm down 3 pawns still. Yeah, but even this would have still been better than the game, maybe. But I'm just playing super passively now, defending everything. My rook's on a6 is so terrible. And he plays queen d6, which makes a lot of sense. I thought he might play queen d8, trying to go for queen f6, but that just blunders the pawn, and I'm back in the game. I think I'm doing pretty okay, maybe. But queen d6 makes sense because it keeps guard of the e5 pawn. And yeah, this is kind of bad. I really want to play queen g6, and if he takes, I take with the king, and I get my king active, and maybe I have some chances. But if queen g6, he probably would have played rook d1, and there's not much to do here. I could play c5, so now my rook on a6 is actually doing something, but then queen takes, and maybe rook d6 is coming next, maybe. And this b5 pawn is hanging, and I'm down 3 pawns here. So I just play queen f5 instead. And he plays rook d1, and I play rook a7. And he plays this very nice move. Very nice move. Taking advantage of my really weak king, because if I take the pawn, queen d4 is a fork. A classic right triangle, or equilibrium triangle, I guess. Yeah, so e6, I cannot take the pawn because of the fork. So I play c5, and he plays e7, and there's no possible way for me to stop the pawn. If rook a8, queen d8, and if I take, he makes a new queen. After queen d8, if I play here, then he could just take, and then play rook d8 again, and once again, I cannot stop the promotion of the pawn. So e6 is a very nice move by him, and I play c5, and he plays e7, and I sacrifice the rook because this position is completely lost. And if he falls asleep at the board, I might win. For example, setting up checkmate in 1, or checkmate with his queen and rook. He blunders checkmate in the back rank. So if he falls asleep, I might win, but he doesn't fall asleep. He goes check here, and I just decide to resign. I guess I don't have to. I guess I could play king g7. I guess. But I just resign because I was done with the game. I was done with the game, and I'm pretty disappointed in myself, just in general. So, but yeah, that was a pretty bad game by my standards. Because there was a pawn blunder here. Yeah, there was this pawn blunder with knight h5 after thinking for 12 minutes. My spidey senses didn't go off. I blunder a pawn. I play g5, which is suspect, but honestly, I guess what else do you do? So I don't blame myself too much for g5. But this move later on, blundering the second pawn with king g7 is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, I should not be blundering a second pawn here. But yeah, I really fumbled the ball in multiple ways throughout the game. Like, I think if I don't lose a second pawn, I don't think I lose this game. But I did blunder the second pawn, and that was that. That was that. I really messed it up. So, but hey, that happens. You have bad games. Just unfortunately for me, I had multiple bad games in a row, and I've fallen back below 1900. This is the first time I've fallen back below 1900 since maybe since August. So it's been about 6 months ish. 7 months, 6-7 months since I've fallen below 1900. So but hey, it is what it is. Life is tough. Life is tough. I'm sure I'll get back there one day. But yeah, the road to NM is series is more like a road to my floor of 700 series. So we'll see how it goes. Game review time. I'll see you guys in the next one.